Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is part 1 of What If Naruto was in Konosuba. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know for part 2. Where am I? A boy with bright blonde hair wearing a tattered orange jumpsuit glanced around the small room with blurry eyes. He was sitting in a chair. He tried to recall his memories, but his mind was still a bit fuzzy. When his eyes finally adjusted, the boy found himself in a small dark space. A single light lit up the otherwise endless void of darkness where he sat on a small wooden chair. Sitting across from him in the small space was a girl who seemed to be smiling at him. Hi. The boy mentally kicked himself for stuttering, but he couldn't help himself because the woman was beautiful. She had long silver white hair, and a heart-shaped face with deep violet eyes that had a hint of sadness to them. Her hands rested on her lavender gown in a very graceful manner. The girl almost seemed to be glowing in the dim light, which gave her a look that could be compared to an angel and even a goddess. Hello, Naruto Uzumaki-san. Welcome to the world after life ends. I am the goddess who will guide your way, Eris. Otherwise known as the goddess of luck. Seeing the look of confusion on Naruto's face, the goddess continued with an almost apologetic expression on her angelic features. There is no easy way to say this, but your time in the mortal world is over. As if a switch had been flipped, the memories of the war began to rush into Naruto's head. Death, betrayal, sacrifice. These were the words to describe the horrors he and his friends had faced. It was hard to process it all and accept that it was all over. So that's how it is. I died. But despite knowing that he was dead, Naruto felt strangely calm. Like he already knew that everything was going to be okay. Eris, can I ask you something? How did everything turn out? Did the war end? Did we win? Eris smiled, and Naruto immediately felt a sense of relief. The goddess radiated serenity, and it was really helping him feel relaxed. The Fourth Great Shinobi War has indeed ended. After you and your friend defeated Madara Uchiha, Obito Uchiha sacrificed himself and revived all of the lives that had been lost in that final battle. That Rinnegan technique that Nagato used to revive everyone back then. But wait, how did I die? After Naruto asked that, Eris gained a sour expression. The mastermind behind all of the evil in your world, Black Zetsu, tried to take over your body after Obito finished using the technique and perished. Because you were so drained from your previous battles, it took everything you had just to keep Black Zetsu from attacking your friends with your body. Then you asked Sasuke to kill me, along with that Black Zetsu bastard. Naruto finished when the memories of his death finally came back. In a last-ditch act of rage, Black Zetsu was going to use his body to kill everyone that he held dear to him. If Sasuke hadn't been there, Naruto would have had the blood of his precious people on his hands. Leaning back in the chair he was sitting in, Naruto took in a deep breath. Sasuke was in a dark place, what with his claim of killing the current Kajin revolution. But the look on Sasuke's face while I was dying is all I need to trust that he'll do the right thing. Naruto thought with a short nod. Having no choice but to believe in his best friend, Naruto leaned forward and grinned widely at the goddess in front of him. Alright, I'm ready for hell. Quote! Question mark quote. Seeing the goddess's befuddled expression, Naruto raised an eyebrow. What's the matter? Eris quickly stood up, her lavender dress fluttering as a frantic look overtook her face. What makes you think I'm sending you to hell? You're a hero. Hero or not, I'm a shinobi. I've killed people. Of course I'm going to hell. Naruto responded like it was only natural, because it was. No matter what the reason, killing was wrong. Naruto knew this and lived a life prepared for what came after he died. Eris sat back down in her chair. You experienced so much pain and loneliness in your life, yet you still believe that you do not deserve salvation. Naruto was slightly taken aback. This goddess was showing so much concern for someone she had only just met. Surely he was only one out of billions of people she's had this conversation with. Such kindness, as expected of a goddess. Noticing the strange look on Naruto's face, Eris blushed and straightened herself. Well then, I have a proposition for you. I hope that you will at least hear me out. Upon hearing her words, Naruto inched back in his seat and eyed Eris suspiciously. Wait, don't tell me that you're actually a devil that is trying to make a deal for my soul. Of course not. Aris yelled and stomped her foot in frustration, her ears burning red. Ha ha ha. Sorry, I was just kidding. Naruto said and held his now aching stomach. He understood the situation he was in, but there was something about this goddess that made him want to tease her. Tease a goddess, and you will receive divine retribution. Aris muttered with a pout which the boy noted to be quite adorable. Sorry. It won't happen again. Naruto shouted obediently and sat up straight in his chair. Suspicion still evident in her eyes, Aris summoned a piece of paper out of thin air with a poof. In another dimension than your own, exists a world that is threatened by a demon king. Because of the demon king's attacks, fewer and fewer people want to be reincarnated into this world. To solve this problem, a plan was issued to ask people from other realms who still yearn to live to reincarnate into this world in response to the declining population. I don't really get it, but you basically want me to go there and kick this demon king's ass? Naruto asked, and Aris nodded with a slightly bemused smile. Yes. Should you accept, you will retain your memories and chakra. The language of the land will also be imported into your mind so you don't have to learn it. As bonus, you will also be granted a divine relic of your choosing. An ability, or weapon with godlike power to aid you in your quest. That's okay. All I need are my 2 fists. Naruto claimed with confidence and slammed his fists together. Are you sure there isn't anything you wish to bring? One. Aris asked with a knowing smile. Naruto tilted his head in confusion when it dawned on him. Kurama. How could he have forgotten the grumpy old fox whom he shared a body with his entire life? So, without a second thought, I'd like to bring Kurama with me to this new world. That is, if he wants to come with me. Naruto murmured the last bit while poking his fingers together nervously. After all, since he died, Kurama's chakra would have been dispersed into nature and would eventually reincarnate somewhere in the elemental nations. The fox would be free, just like he always wanted. They had only just become friends, if one could even call it friendship. Aris smiled reassuringly. I've already spoken with Kurama-san, and when I explained the situation, he said, I've grown bored of this world anyway, and agreed to go with you. Aris said while making a grumpy-sounding voice that must have been her impression of the nine-tailed fox. Naruto's eyes widened upon hearing this, and he couldn't help but laugh. That sounded just like something Kurama would say, and it was relieving to hear the fox wanted to tag along on this adventure. Aris suddenly snapped her fingers. Then, to Naruto's surprise, a brilliant light shined down on him and he felt a sense of weightlessness as he began to ascend into the heavens, literally. As Naruto was filled with excitement, he heard Aris' voice from below. Of course, there is a small chance that both of your existences could be wiped out while transporting to the new world. But as the goddess of luck, I can safely say that the odds are in your favor. Good luck. What do you mean our existences might be wiped out? Hey, answer me. Aris merely stuck her tongue out playfully, and Naruto realized that she must have been getting back at him for teasing her earlier. A cheeky grin on his face, Naruto waved goodbye to the goddess of luck as his vision faded to black. Naruto Uzumaki's next adventure had begun. Axel Town. Naruto opened his eyes and eagerly took in the view. He was standing in the middle of what seemed to be a park. Children running around the patch of grass as their mothers conversed with one another. Surrounding the park were 1 to 2 story structures with wooden roofs. In the short distance, he could see the streets were bustling with townsfolk and merchants advertising their goods to those that passed by. This place seems peaceful, Naruto thought as a pair of kids ran right past him. Wasn't the Demon King a pretty big deal? Aris did say that people were refusing to reincarnate back into this world because of the Demon King's attacks. Blinking in realization, Naruto shut his eyes and screamed into his mind. Kurama, are you there? Hey, talk to me, buddy. Quit yelling. Of course I'm here. The angry voice of Kurama bellowed in the blonde's mind, and Naruto found himself grinning widely. Sorry, I was just worried you might have changed your mind. I'm glad you're here. It was either this or be enslaved by that accused Uchiha you still foolishly call a friend. Hee, so you would have missed me, huh? Love you too, buddy. Don't make me regret coming here, brat. Kurama warned with a low growl, prompting the Jinchuriki to mutter a sheepish apology. While Naruto was chatting with Kurama, some of the kids began to gather around him due to their curiosity, prompting the mothers to rush over to keep their children away from the strange grinning boy who was standing on the middle of the park with his eyes closed. But I'm impressed those self-proclaimed gods were able to collect all of my chakra and send the both of us here. They even managed to recreate a seal similar to that of your father's. Naruto opened his eyes and lifted his shirt, which was surprisingly untattered now, and molded some chakra to find a group of strange markings on his stomach. But before he could make a comment, he heard a few gasps. There was a group of children with their eyes being covered by their blushing mothers, their eyes glued on his abdomen. Naruto put his shirt back down and laughed awkwardly. Maybe I should go somewhere else. That you should. After apologizing to the mothers in the park, Naruto ventured into the town. So, what should we do first? We're in a whole new world, no one knows us, and we don't have any money. So far, he had confirmed that he spoke the same language as the people here and that the town they were in was called Axel, the town of beginners. He had also tried to buy a snack from a nearby food stand but found that the currency was obviously different in this world. Go figure. It looked like Gama-chan and his remaining Ryo were nothing but a memento. Town of beginners, K. They should have sent us straight to the Demon King's castle. We don't know anything about this world, so of course we'd be sent to a beginner town. It may seem weird coming from me, but information first, Demon King later. Kurama merely responded with a grunt. I think I'm gonna look for that bar that we've heard about. Jiraiya's sensei always said that bars were the best places to go for information. We both know the real reason that perverted mentor of yours would go to those bars. You would think a library would be the first place one would go for information, but I doubt your dumb ass would be caught dead in one of those places. Not that I blame you. That's harsh, Kurama. Love you too, buddy. A tick mark formed on Naruto's forehead, but he was pulled out of his thoughts when something crashed next to him. He looked down to see a teenage boy with brown hair that appeared to be about his age. The boy had collapsed on the ground under a few planks of wood, having seemed to have overexerted himself. Naruto pulled the planks off the guy who was gasping for air. Hey, you okay? Why yeah, thanks. I need to get these planks to the construction site soon or else the boss is gonna yell at me again. Where'd that useless woman run off to? Woman. Perhaps the guy's coworker. Naruto looked around and didn't see woman dressed in a similar fashion to this boy. Shrugging, the shinobi decided to seek some information. Hey, I heard there's a good bar around here. Could you point me in the right direction? Naruto asked as he helped gather up the planks from the ground. The boy stopped what he was doing and looked up, raising an eyebrow when he took in the shinobi's appearance for the first time. Those are some weird clothes, are you a traveler? The teen asked while eyeing the shinobi's apparel, particularly the headband. Something like that, Naruto said and scratched his cheek awkwardly, not really sure how else he could answer. The boy hummed as if in thought before he grabbed something out of his pocket. Here, I'm guessing you don't have any money, and I have a feeling you'll need this later. Naruto took the offered pouch and examined it. There were coins inside. Are you sure? We only just met. Call it my good deed for the day. Treat me to a drink or something later if it's that big of a deal to you. The teen said with a snicker and heaved the planks over his shoulder. He then pointed down the street with his free hand. Follow that road and take a right, there's a big building called the Adventurers Guild. They'll have what you're looking for. Looking in the same direction, Naruto nodded and grinned widely in appreciation. Thanks a lot. I'll be sure to return the favor someday. By the way, the name's Naruto Uzumaki. Kazuma Sato, and it's not a problem at all. A good senpai like me has to set a good example for his kahai. Kazuma. Where's Kazuma? We need those planks ASAP. What is that skinny brat doing? Kazuma's face paled when he was cut off by a deep raging voice that Naruto could only assume was his boss. I gotta go. See ya. Naruto waved awkwardly as he watched his fellow teen run off with new vigor. Poor guy, he must have it rough. After following the directions he had been given by Kazuma, Naruto found a building that was quite a bit larger than the surrounding structures. Without a doubt, this had to be the Adventurers Guild. Taking a short breath, Naruto walked through the front door. Immediately upon entering the building that was bustling with activity, he was greeted by a passing waitress. Welcome. If you're here to eat, just take any of the open seats. I was actually wondering if I could get some information. Naruto had to yell to get the waitress's attention again as she was already walking away to continue working. Certainly. Just walk over to the reception desks. The staff working there will be more than happy to answer your questions. Thanking the woman, Naruto walked towards the reception desks while taking in the guild's interior. Maybe it was because of his bright orange clothes, but he seemed to be drawing a lot of attention. Burly-looking men with large weapons and other gear stared at him as if they were sizing him up as a potential threat. Didn't seem like he'd be making friends anytime soon. Walking up towards the reception desks, Naruto noticed there were 2 stalls. One of which had a very long line, while the other was completely empty. Naruto raised an eyebrow before making the obvious choice of walking to the open stall. "Welcome to Axel Town's Adventurers Guild. How may I help you?" A receptionist with short brown hair and green eyes said with a glowing expression, almost as if she hadn't expected him to talk to her. "Are these 2 stalls different in any way? Do you cover different topics than the other one or something?" Naruto asked while browsing at various flyers and contraptions on the desk. "Perfect. Information. Ah, no, the adventures just like to speak with Luna-san," the receptionist said with a wry smile and pointed towards the other stall to prove her point. Following the girl's finger, Naruto got a glance at the other receptionist, and he immediately understood why the adventurers, who were mostly men, wanted to talk to her. Blonde hair, golden eyes, and large breasts that looked as though they would pop out of her shirt that was clearly a size too small. The woman was gorgeous. "Looks like she has her hands full," Naruto commented with a bead of sweat trailing down his cheek as he watched a male adventurer walk to the woman, his eyes far lower than eye level. It was ridiculous how some men didn't even bother to hide their lecherous intent. "For shame," says the guy who perverted the transformation jutsu when he was just a brat. Kurama chimed in on Naruto's thoughts with a snarky tone. Ignoring the noisy fox, Naruto turned his attention back to the receptionist just as she continued. "Luna-san is like an older sister to us all, especially to the adventurers. So what brings you to the Adventurers Guild, sir?" "Please don't call me, sir, that makes me sound old. The name's Naruto, and I was wondering if you could answer a few questions for me," Naruto said while smiling bitterly, and the receptionist giggled into her hand and nodded. "I'll try my best to answer, Naruto-san." After Naruto asked some of his basic questions, like important places he'd need to go and where the Demon King was, the receptionist's eyes widened. "You want to defeat the Demon King? Well, the best place to start would be joining this guild and becoming an adventurer. After all, Axel is well known for being the town of beginners." Naruto nodded his head eagerly and asked the obvious question. "How do I sign up?" "You just have to pay the registration fee of 1,000 aris, and we can take care of the rest." Naruto gulped when he heard this, but quickly remembered the money Kazuma lent him. Fishing the small pouch of coins out of his pocket, Naruto placed the change into the receptionist's hand. "Is this enough?" "Yes, that's the exact amount. 1,000 aris exactly." Did Kazuma already know he'd be joining the Adventurers Guild? Naruto decided he'd buy the guy 2 drinks the next time he saw him. "Now then, let me explain. Every adventurer has their own occupation or class. You can register what class you want to be onto your adventurer's card." The receptionist explained and placed a small index card on the counter. "This will keep track of the monsters you've killed, as well as your level, skills, and experience points." Naruto tilted his head in confusion. How does it do that? With magic? Magic? The receptionist blinked. "Naruto-san, do you perhaps not know anything about magic?" "Nope, not at all," Naruto admitted without hesitation while waved his hand dismissively, and the receptionist gained a troubled expression. "I can take it from here," the woman named Luna said as she walked over to them, and the receptionist Naruto had been previously talking to thanked the girl before excusing herself. As Luna gathered some things from under the reception desk, Naruto glanced at the other counter and was surprised to find the long line of adventurers were long gone. She helped all those people that fast. Now then, Naruto-san was it. "Let me explain to you what magic is." "Why yes, I'll be in your care." Naruto's head spun as the kind and very patient receptionist thoroughly explained how magic worked in this world. Magic, which was this world's equivalent to chakra, was used by adventurers in forms of spells and magical items. Everyone generated their own mana over time and spells consumed it while most magic items didn't. That was the gist of what Naruto picked up from the explanation. Next, we'll decide what your class will be. But first, place your hand here. Luna said and placed a contraption with a glass ball onto the desk, which Naruto assumed was one of the magic items she had been talking about. Placing his hand onto the orb, it began to glow as energy visibly spun around the gear-like parts. A stream of magic beamed down to the registration card that had been placed below the magic item, and Naruto was surprised as symbols began to form. Whoa! Naruto whispered in awe as he witnessed magic for the first time. The receptionist grabbed the card when the magic item stopped writing and began to look over the information. Let's see what your stats are. This is. Naruto was about to ask what was written on the card when Luna stared at him with a look wonder. Your stats are amazing. Well above average across the board, and ridiculously high luck. Though your intelligence is about average. The girl exclaimed while mumbling the last bit with a slight hint of disappointment. Naruto didn't really understand, but it sounded like he was being praised, so he rubbed the back of his head and grinned sheepishly. Wait, did she say his intelligence was about average? What was that supposed to mean? No way, did we just get another golden rookie? Not just Aqua-chan, but 2 golden rookies. We sure are lucky this week. Bless Aris. Naruto looked around when a crowd began to gather around him. Nervous from the sudden attention, he quickly looked back at the excited receptionist who was still looking at his adventurer's card with a befuddled expression. What does this mean? With stats like this, you can choose any of the advanced classes right away. Although I don't recommend choosing Archwizard, which depends on the intelligence stat. The receptionist explained, while yet again mumbling the last bit. Oi! Naruto was about to choose Archwizard out of spite when the surrounding adventurers started shouting out their suggestions. Be a sword master. No way, this guy's aura is screaming crusader. I don't know, the world could always use another archpriest. Trying his best to ignore the noisy audience, Naruto leaned towards the pretty receptionist so she could hear him better. Are there any limitations to each class? I'd pick the thief class since it's the closest thing to a ninja, but I just want to make sure. I don't know what a ninja is, but there are indeed limitations to each class. For example, a thief wouldn't be able to learn skills like intermediate magic that a mage could learn. Well, that's a bummer. I wanted to try learning magic, but if I choose the thief class, then I won't be able to do so until I change class. I can't think with all these people shouting. Naruto was about to snap at the noisy adventurers when Luna spoke up again. There is also the adventurers class that can learn skills from all the other classes, but with stats like yours. I'll take it. Make me an adventurer please. The crowd fell silent, the previous excitement dying out in an instant. Serves them right, Naruto thought with a mischievous grin as the adventurers started walking away. He heard them mumbling amongst themselves, some of them saying things like, talk about a letdown, and, what a waste. But that didn't bother him in the slightest. Besides, the adventurer class may be the weakest of the bunch, but now he could learn skills from all of the various classes. So what if it took a little longer to earn enough skill points? His adventurer's card said he already had plenty. I see, you could always change your class later. Luna said with a strained smile, but she proceeded to make the changes to Naruto's adventurer's card and handed it to him. Now all you have to do is walk over to that board there and pick out a quest. But I recommend forming a party first. Solo hunting can be dangerous, especially for beginners. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for helping me, Naruto said and took a second look at his adventurer's card, a massive grin on his face. He felt a sudden urge of excitement welding up inside him. His goal was to defeat the Demon King, but being an adventurer seemed kind of fun. You're very welcome, Naruto-san. I wish you luck on your adventures. Naruto waved to the pretty receptionist and turned towards the job board to pick his first job as an adventurer. He wasn't going to bother creating a party since he didn't plan on staying in this town for very long. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't a beginner in the slightest. He'd stay in this town for a week at most and do some quests to earn some money, or at least until he understood the way this world worked a little better. Later that night, A beautiful girl with light blue hair and blue eyes was arguing with a brown-haired boy in a green tracksuit in the corner of the Adventurers Guild. I'm telling you, Kazuma. I sensed a huge amount of demonic energy earlier today. But I couldn't find the source, but I'm telling you, I sensed it. That's why you ran off, Aqua. Because you suddenly took off running, I was late to bring the supplies, and the boss yelled at me again. All because you thought you sensed something with your former what's-it-called powers. I'm not lying. Maybe it was General from the Demon King's army looking for me. After all, I am a goddess. As in now, they must have sensed my holy presence. Aqua claimed loudly while slamming on the table. A Demon King army general. In the town farthest from the Demon King's castle. Yeah right, it was probably a new player, with some hacks-like powers. Kazuma said and took a sip of his beverage, a self-satisfied look on his face. In fact, I think I bumped into the guy after you needlessly ran off. I showed him where the Adventurers Guild was and even lent him some money to get started like any good senpai would. Really Tilda, who would have thought Sting Izuma would part with his money so easily? Aqua retorted flatly while trying to sneak a hand towards Kazuma's plate while he wasn't looking, only to have it skillfully smacked by the other party. How rude. Don't call me Sting Izuma, just because I refused to lend you money. I was going to buy you that drink you wanted to try because I was in a good mood, but now I change my mind. Why? Besides, what if that guy wasn't even from Japan? Then that would mean you just gave your money to some random stranger for no reason. You could have bought me something with that money. Kazuma stopped drinking and calmly placed his cup on the table. He then looked at Aqua with a serious, yet competitive expression. Wanna bet on it? Aqua returned the look in full. Next week's rent. The two then shook hands, both thinking that they had already won. After a couple days of solo hunting, Naruto sat at the bar with a cup full of something called naruto juice. It was what the waitress had recommended since he didn't want alcohol. Having completed a silver wolf hunting quest by himself on the first day, Naruto had earned enough money to rent out a nice room at an inn for the week. He then went on a couple more monster hunting quests to save up for the trip he was planning to take to the next town, his eventual goal being the Demon King's castle. The other adventurers appeared to be avoiding him for some reason. Perhaps it was because he chose the adventurer class to spite them. Or maybe they were wary of him because of the time that he had wiped the floor with a certain delinquent adventurer who had picked a fight with him when he called the head receptionist, Luna-chan. Naruto shrugged as he took a sip of the surprisingly delicious carbonated beverage. So what if he didn't make any friends in this town? It wasn't something he wasn't already used to, and he didn't plan on staying in town for very long anyway. Speaking of which, he had yet to see Kazuma again. Which was disappointing because Naruto wanted to pay the guy back before he left. I could always look for the guy, but what good would it do if Kazuma's in the middle of working? I can't just interrupt and get him in trouble just to say thanks. Naruto was pulled out of his thoughts when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he found Luna smiling at him. Are you done with your quest for today, Naruto-san? Yeah, I am. What's up Luna-chan? Luna smiled wryly, remembering the uproar Naruto had caused in the guild when he first called her that. Not that she particularly minded. Naruto seemed like a nice guy, and it saddened her whenever she saw him sitting alone. He had even completed a handful of durian quests on his own free will. Durian quests are the tedious jobs that are avoided like the plague in RPGs. It's named after a smelly fruit that tastes good. Lol. Whenever Luna brought up one of these quests around the other adventurers, they would quickly avert their gazes. So when she saw Naruto accept a durian quest, and complete it in record time, she immediately jumped at the chance to ask him to take on more of them. Speaking of which, Luna lightly clasped her fingertips together and smiled apologetically. Could I trouble you for another favor? Later that evening, Naruto found himself standing in the middle of the town's cemetery. According to Luna, a larger than usual amount of undead had been spawning recently. She said that it was likely the presence of a zombie maker, which was an evil spirit that possessed and controlled corpses. As the temperature began to fall with the setting sun, an eerie mist began to rise alongside the moon which gave the area quite a spooky atmosphere. A bead of sweat formed on Naruto's brow as he stood in the middle of the steadily increasing darkness. Alone. Naruto had dealt with zombies before, what with Kabuto and his usage of the reanimation jutsu during the war. But the idea of an evil spirit that couldn't pass on. He didn't have any sealing jutsu, other than the one to make a basic storage scroll. Would he even be able to do anything about this ghost? What? Are you scared of a couple undead? Oh, of course not. This setting is just a little unsettling. Naruto snapped at the biju as he heard the sound of dirt crumbling behind him. Something seemed to be coming out of the ground when a hand broke free, reaching into the air. Another hand broke out of the dirt right next to him and Naruto stepped on it with his sandal out of reflex when it tried to grab him, earning a satisfying crunch. Like a scene straight out of a horror movie, more hands and eventually entire torsos began to rise from the earth. There's a lot of them, but it's nothing I can't handle. Naruto pulled out a small knife he'd purchased from a local blacksmith and got to work. He zipped through the undead that tried to grab him, all while chopping their heads off with precision. How did he know how to kill a zombie? He saw it in a movie once back in the Elemental Nations as a kid when he used to sneak into the theaters. Just as Naruto killed the last one, he heard a soft chuckle. Looking around for the source of the laughter, Naruto whirled around and spotted a floating figure holding a lantern. It looked like a skeleton wearing a cloak, only its lower half was gone as it hovered through the air in a wispy fashion. That must be the zombie maker. Having found his target, Naruto ran towards the cackling creature with his knife at the ready. The evil spirit noticed the shinobi at the last second, but it only had time to make a surprised screeching sound as the dagger seemingly phased right through its head. Naruto blinked as he stared at the surprisingly expressive zombie maker, with it staring right back at him with an equally surprised look. Naruto began to sweat bullets. His dagger had merely phased right through it, reminiscent of his first encounter with Obito. Realizing that it wasn't in any real danger, the zombie maker cackled some more and flew right through Naruto's torso. A cold shiver shot up Naruto's spine. That was a feeling he never wanted to experience again. The Jinchuriki turned around and watched as the spirit flew deeper into the graveyard. This is going to be a long night. Why are we in this creepy cemetery? I'm tired from working at the construction site. I wanna go back to the guild and drink with everyone. Aqua complained as she was unwillingly dragged through the cemetery. If you have the energy to complain, then you can work. The head receptionist said that this would be a good starting quest for us as adventurers because you were an archpriest, and I couldn't just deny a favor from that pretty Oni-chan either. Kazuma said while ignoring the scornful look Aqua was sending him. The pretty receptionist had personally asked him to complete the quest, so it had to be one of those events that he'd been craving for ever since coming to this world. Even if Aqua would technically be doing all the work. Besides, this is our first real job as adventurers. You're an archpriest who claims to be a goddess lol, and our opponents are undead. Theoretically speaking, this quest should be a piece of cake. Don't wanna. I'm fine with just being a construction worker. Kazuma's eyebrow twitched as he stopped to turn around and look at his companion, who had fallen to the floor and started rolling around like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum. You, stop whining and get to work, you useless goddess. Weren't you complaining about wanting to go home the other day? Fine, do a good job, and I'll treat you to that neuroid stuff you wanted to try the other day. Aqua stopped crying and looked up at Kazuma.